It's just another attempt to pillory, as far as I can tell. And I think that it's dreadful. I really think it is. There was an article written by I believe the editor of the New York Review of Books that was just republished in the Globe and Mail, talking about the emergence of hypermasculinity and how I was somehow responsible for that or contributing to it, like Mussolini. And I read that and I thought, yeah, like Mussolini. And I thought, okay, so what are you doing? I see. You're defining masculinity, you're conflating masculinity and hypermasculinity at the same time. Then you're virtue signaling by being against hypermasculinity. But really what you're trying to do is bring down whatever it is that's masculinity. And what masculinity is in this frame is something like competence. And so it's part of the radical leftists' general war on competence as well, which I think is one of the most pernicious elements of the culture wars. The dissolution of hierarchies, the assumption that every hierarchy has to be based on power and serve the needs of your group, whatever that happens to be, that there's no such thing as competence. And then the other thing that's reprehensible about it, because that's not enough, is that it's just wrong. Wherever I go now, and this is one of the things, this is the thing that's so wonderful about that, all of this, as far as I'm concerned, is that people come up to me all the time, and that's exactly what they say. They say, look, I was lost, aimless, depressed, nihilistic, anxious, drug addicted, alcoholic, wasting my time, lost, essentially, and hopeless in some sense. And I've been watching your lectures, and they've really helped, and I've really been putting my life together, and I've been trying to say what I believe to be true and develop a vision, and it's really helped. And and it's so overwhelming, you know, like if I'm doing book signings after a talk, then there'll be a dozen people or more who, and these aren't, and like I'm only talking to people for about 15 seconds, but you can have a very intense conversation in 15 seconds. And they'll say, look, you know, like I was suicidal, man. Like I was really hanging on to the edge of the earth by my fingernails, and I'm better. And they have tears in their eyes. It's like,
that's amazing.
Little of that goes a long way, man. And here's the other bit of proof. Like you say, well, how do you know that you can trust someone's judgment about a fact? The fact emerges despite their ideological presuppositions. Okay, so it's well known that the social sciences and the humanities have a left tilt, and a lot of that's temperamental, and the tilt has become more pronounced. But as Jonathan Haidt has pointed out, there are no conservatives among social personality psychologists, or none to speak of.
Very few, yeah.
Very few. Vanishingly few. And if the field has a bias, it is definitely and indisputably a left-wing bias. Okay, so you have to fight that if you're a scientist, right? Even if you're a left-wing scientist, you have to fight that because you want to get to the facts. It was these social scientists who generated the data that suggested that the gender differences not only were real, but that were bigger in egalitarian societies. They didn't do that to grind their ideological axe, because their ideological presupposition was, no, you make the society egalitarian, men and women get more the same. It's like, nope, they get more different. Oh, isn't that something? And so then there's a corollary there, which is, all right, you could still say, and they're kind of pushing in this direction in Scandinavia, boys and girls are different. Men and women are different. It looks biological. But because people are malleable, you could push the socio-cultural structure harder and harder to minimize the biological differences. Okay, well, first of all, maybe and maybe not. Maybe you'd get a rebound and they'd get even, like, the kids would rebel. That could easily happen. But let's say, okay, you could. The problem with that is that if you cede that much power to the state, like, you're basically giving the state the right to socialize your kids.
Right.
It's like, you really? You really want to do that? I mean, the people in Israel couldn't do that with the kibbutzes, right? It didn't work. So people aren't going to give up their children to the state, and thank God for that.